Hey guys, good to be back here today. It's Wednesday. Well, it's through Tuesday. Sorry, this is for Wednesday, April 1st, but today it's Tuesday, the 31st of March. Hoping you guys are all doing well. I think some of the reality about some things are starting to set in a little bit. I'll be honest with you. Even yesterday, Monday and Sunday, there were some times where kind of feeling sorry for myself, kind of questioning, is the government making the right decisions? Am I making the right decisions? Those types of things, and you're going to have some of those. You're going to have some of those periods of time where you're unsure about what's going to happen, right? The government kind of keeps extending the day that they say things are going to be open back up. But we're not going to focus on the negatives today, okay, or the challenges. And again, if you're overwhelmed with some of that stuff, remember you're not alone, okay. Even your parents, even your teachers, your principal and all that stuff, they feel a lot of the same way. So hang in there, okay, and we're going to we're going to get through this stuff. So the goal is obviously to give you the best chance possible to pass the AP test in the middle of May. I haven't heard anything about dates or anything like that yet. We'll keep you posted on that. We're going to finish our talk today on fiscal policy solutions to inflationary and recessionary gaps. Okay, so what I want you to do first is I've got you can see I've upgraded my setup down here. Okay, so you've got two graphs. Take a quick second, okay? Draw out what those look like with your aggregate demand curve, long run aggregate supply, short run aggregate supply. Make sure you label your axes. Okay, take a second and get that done. All right, there's what your answers are there. See if I didn't show them very good. I didn't get them big enough. All right, so all right, the problem in the inflationary gap, right, is that demand's too high. We want to eventually lower that demand, okay? And if you're making sure that you're labeling things correctly, all right, that's what we really are worried about, right? Recessionary gap, again, the equilibrium point is to the left of the long run aggregate supply curve. That should be a review. One more quick review. Remember, if the government does not do anything, remember what's occurred here, okay? Demand is too high, which means our price level where we want it to right here, right? Our price level is too high. Remember, that goes into our wages, right? So our wages in the long run, eventually, okay, we're going to decrease our supply because our wages are too high, right? Over and over and over again, okay? That's what happens in the long run, okay? On the recessionary gap, remember, wages get too low, all right? Wages get too low, and so now people eventually, we can hire more workers. It takes some time. It's a long run, right? So it takes some time, but people eventually decide that they can't be unemployed anymore, so we start seeing this shift of the supply curve back to the right, okay? So the increase in supply in a recessionary gap or the decrease in supply on the inflationary gap, best described as we're going to change the price level of wages, okay? So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about what the government can do in the short run, hopefully, because, again, it might take longer than what it would take to get reelected. And the government likes to try to get reelected, right? So they want to make it look like they are doing something. So we're going to talk about what the government can do to fix these things. We're going to do a little bit of math. It's not anything that's too difficult, but it is a concept that we do have to remember as we move forward. All right, I'm gonna pause for a second, get myself set back up. Okay, hey, we're back here. The one thing I'll mention is you might be able to find in your notes where to write this stuff. To be honest, the Chrome extension on the Chromebook where I have to use my Screencastify has not been friendly to me. So kind of doing things a little bit different. Again, in your notes, you could find this spot, but if you're writing the stuff down without your notes that I printed off for you, that's completely fine. Okay, so the big thing to understand here is if we are in a situation where we receive more money, so whether or not it's going to be the government taxing us less or whether or not it's going to be the government creating a new spending program, okay, that people that receive it can only do two things, okay? Pretty clearly wrote out for you. Number one, they can spend it, all right? Now, the tricky part about this is we call it the marginal propensity to consume, okay? Or we're also looking at it and it says MPC, okay? Now that's going to mix us up because the other thing that people can do is save it. Well, look at the the marginal propensity to save is MPS, okay? So one thing that people do is say, oh, marginal propensity to spend MPS, it might get us screwed up a little bit, okay? So we know that those two people have to do one of those two things, all right? And we're going to be able to figure out a percentage for each of those. If you look at your question there, pause it if you need to, all right? Your question is, if economy's MPC is 0.75, what is its MPS? Then I ask you the same thing. If it is 0.9, what is it MPS? Take a quick second, pause it if you need to. Shouldn't need to. Hopefully, I wasn't very clear. You have this in mind, right? It has to equal 100. Okay, we're going to put it in a decimal form. We put it in there. We got 0.25 right here, and we've got 0.1 right there. Okay, those are some common numbers that you'll see as we move forward. Okay, now we're going to tell you what you can do with this information as we apply it to one more quick little formula here and be able to solve what a government's going to do in terms of a recessionary gap. Okay, so what we've got to understand is just because the government only gives one group of people an amount of money doesn't mean that they're not going to go spend it. In fact, obviously, the intent of people receiving money is that they go and spend it. All right, so we've got to understand, and we'll show you an example here in a second, that when people receive money, it's going to be spent several different times within an economy. Okay, so our multiplier formula is pretty simple. Okay, we do got to remember though, right, is it's 1 over MPS. Okay, and so it's just something that you've got to keep in mind. So I set up a thing over here. All right, take a quick second. All righty, and figure out the MPS for each of those marginal propensities to consume. All right, take a quick second, fill that out. All right, our next step is I filled in my answers there for you, 0.1, 0.2, 0.5, and 1. Okay, remember, all these have to equal a total of 1. All right, so just as an example, I am going to consume with 90% of my money. I'm going to save with 10% of my money. That's got to equal 1. Okay, so now I got to apply it to the multiplier. All right, so I've got to take 1 over MPS. All right, go ahead and do that math real quick and see if you can't come up with the same multiplier numbers that I do. All right, I've got your answers up there. All right, I just took 1 divided by 0.1 is 10. 1 divided by 0.2 is 5. 1 divided by 0.5 is 2. 1 divided by 1 is 1. Okay, so those are your answers there for that. Pretty simple concept. All right, we're going to apply it to our work here in a second. We're going to talk real quick, though, how getting it with taxes is slightly different. Now, with taxes are a little bit different. I don't know if they'll ask a question about this, but there's usually one in the multiple choice section, which we've talked about already. There is no multiple choice section for the most part. But our tax multiplier, okay, the idea is that when I get taxes, so like, for example, when I just say, hey, we're going to spend $100 billion on the stimulus program versus, hey, we're going to cut taxes by $100 billion. What we've got to understand is I'm going to hold on to a little bit extra of that tax money. Okay, so our formula is really easy. It's the spending multiplier minus 1. Okay, it's not too difficult. Obviously, we're going to take the spending multiplier for each of these. It's going to be 9, 4, 1, and 0. Okay, so it's the spending multiplier minus 1. Nothing necessarily overly difficult. It is one more thing that we've got to remember. Okay, let's get to the point where we're going to do some of these problems. Okay, I want to focus over here in this blue area real quick. I kind of skipped over a little piece of information. Okay, so we talked about how, okay, if I'm person A, I get $1,000. We're going to use as an example here to spend whatever tax return, for example, that money is going to flow through the economy more than just that one time that I get that payment. Okay, so what we're talking about, this is the multiplier effect. And it really just explains in detail what we just did with math and what we're going to show you here with our practice problem. Okay, so the idea is that person 1 gets $1,000, okay, from a tax return, let's say. All right, keep in mind we've already identified the MPC. It's 0.9. That means that I'm going to consume with 90% of my money. And I give this a simple example here that they're going to spend 900 of that. They're going to save 10%, okay, but they're going to spend 900 of that on car repairs. All right, let's just keep track of how much money's been spent over here. So we got $900, okay? Person 2, he's the car repair guy, right? Person 2 receives $900, okay? And again, obviously that's new income for him. Whether or not he got the tax return is a different conversation, okay? But he receives that $900, okay? Now, he's going to spend that 90% of that too. But he only has 90% of $900 is only 810, okay? So we're over here, we've got 810 total dollars, okay? Now, this person, the car repairman, all right, he's going to buy a new roof. I don't know, I'm making things up, right? So person 3 is going to put the roof on. He's going to get 90% of that 810. That's about $729, okay? So person 3 gets that $729, all right? And he's going to spend 90% also. And he's going to spend 651 is 90% of 729. He's going to spend that. And whatever he spends it on, right, it creates an income of 671 for some other person. Okay, so what that initial $1,000 creates, if we're going to spend it within the economy, right, we've got somewhere in the range of, doing my math fast, I got $3,100. Somebody check my math, okay? But the idea stays the same in terms of again, one deposit is going to hopefully stimulate the economy that much faster. Okay, that's the multiplier effect. I will share a video with you about that is explained pretty clearly. All righty, take a quick pause here. Okay, guys, we have a question that would be similar to what you might see on an AP exam, okay? And so we're using the multiplier for spending. Our example here has you drawing and labeling an economy that has experienced a $10 billion recessionary gap. Take a quick second and do that. Okay, I've got my graph all set up here. It's pretty straightforward. Identify your equilibrium points, okay, which is right here. All right, we want to be matched up with eventually the long-run aggregate supply curve. And we showed you to start the video, right? Our recessionary gap, all they want you to do is write recessionary gap. Okay, and then I put that number $10 billion in there too. Okay, so I've identified what I've needed to do. Okay, let's go up to the question here, and it's going to say, all right, assume the government has decided to implement the fiscal policy of increasing spending to close the gap. And I gave you guys two different MPCs. Okay, so I gave you the first MPC is 0.5. All right, I gave you the second MPC, which is 0.8. So first things first, we got to figure out what, right? We're going to start with part A here. We'll skip the part B here in a second. I'll erase my stuff. Okay, so first thing we got to do is figure out if MPC equals 5.5. What does MPS equal? That's easy, right? They have to equal 1. All right, so what's our multiplier going to be? So, I'm sorry, they have to equal 1. It is 0.5. All right, so what's my multiplier going to be? Well, my multiplier is 1 over 0.5. Okay, so my multiplier equals 2. Okay, so I've got my multiplier at 2. I'm going to pause here. I'm going to organize my stuff a little bit better, and we'll get back. Okay, so we figured out that our multiplier has to equal 2. All right, and so we know that the money is going to go through the economy. Basically, I guess you could say like 2 times. That's one way you could look at it, which isn't necessarily the best way to explain it. But we know that the money is going to go through there. So we've got to figure out, all right, how much do we need to increase our spending by? All right, it's pretty straightforward. You've just got to know what you're figuring out. You've got to figure out the multiplier. You've got to remember how to figure out MPS, right? And then you go from there and set up a really simple math equation. So first of all, I've got to increase spending by 10 billion. Okay, that was given to us up in the problem, right? So we know that we've got to increase spending like that. All righty, now we also know that our multiplier is 2. Okay, so now we've got to figure out how much do we need to put into this economy in this particular case. We're just going to call that X right now. Okay, so we've got 2X. All righty, and this is our spending right here. X equals spending increase. And now we're doing simple algebra. Okay, so we take that 10 billion divided by 2. We've got X equals $5 billion. All right, pretty straightforward. Now, go ahead, take some time here. Do part B. All right, do part B. You've got to find a new multiplier. See if you can't figure out how much we need to increase spending by in that particular case. I skipped ahead here on you. I figured out what my multiplier was. Notice how I did it. MPC's 8, MPS is 0.2. 1 over 0.2 equals 5. We're still trying to decrease this recessionary gap by 10 billion. How much do we got to spend? 5x. X equals $2 billion. All right, that's what we're looking for. We got one more problem for you here, and then I'm going to get off here and give you guys a chance to practice on some MyAP stuff. Okay, same setup here, just different numbers. Okay, so we've got a draw and labeling economy that's experienced a $50 billion recessionary gap. Go. All right, guys, there's my graph there. Okay, make sure you're matched up. Remember, the big thing is recessionary gaps are over to the left. Remember, we want to output this. Real GDP, output, inflation, price level, right? Okay. Also, employment over to the right, unemployment. Employment over here, 0. Employment out here, 100. Okay. I added a quick little thing to it, okay? Kind of a little curveball for you. It's not a curveball. You know the answer. Make sure you think about what you're saying, okay? So anyway, we're asked to figure out, let's do part A first, okay? I'm going to take a minute. I'll do it for us down here. You do the same, and we will see what you come up with. All righty, I got 2A finished. You guys know I'm picky about writing down as much stuff as I need to write down, right? So I encourage you guys to write things down. It's going to help organize your thoughts, okay? So MPC 9, MPS 0.1, multiplier equals 10. I abbreviated a little bit there, okay? And then I went through and I said, okay, 10x equals 50 billion, x equals 5 billion. Do the same thing for B. It's a little bit tricky with the taxes. Go check your notes here real quick. All right, guys, the tricky part here is the tax multiplier, remember, is the spending multiplier minus 1. Okay, so we've got to take that 10 that we just had. We've got to take 1 from it. It equals 9, okay? 9x equals 50 billion. My math wasn't good, and that's what I get for making up a problem on the fly. X equals 50 over 9. Our final answer is going to be 5 over $0.44 billion, okay? So anyway, pretty straightforward. With that, number 3. Okay, they're almost trying to trick you here because they're throwing something new at you. It says, what can be expected to happen to the price level after implementation of, number 1, your spending increase, and number 2, your tax cut? This should be 2 easy points, right? Because we know that when we increase government spending or decrease taxes, what's it going to do to our aggregate demand curve? It's going to shift it to the right. So we know that we can draw on here, right? Our new AD, wherever it goes, right? Our new AD is that our spending increase is going to cause a price level to rise, okay? And our tax cut is going to cause the price level to rise. Notice it doesn't say how much, okay? It's just asking you what it's going to do. All righty. Guys, I hope you're having a good, I hope you're finding a way to be entertained, finding some good Netflix shows or whatever to watch. I'm always open for suggestions. I just finished the Tiger King. What a bizarre planet we live on. Okay, so get a hold of me if you need things, and we'll continue trying to do some of this stuff. I will talk to you. We'll get together about monetary policy on the week after spring break. All right, get caught up if you're behind. If you're not behind, awesome. Hopefully you are getting out of the MyAP stuff what you need to be. All right, we'll talk to you guys soon.